We're going live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Talking Saul stream. We're going to be going over episode 8 of season 6. We've been doing these for the last couple of, I won't say over a month, about a month ago. And they just started the next segment of season 6. There's going to be like 8 through 13, episodes. So about 6 more episodes, if I'm correct, right?
Yep. Technically, well, 5 more episodes, I think.
Well, after
Technically,
this,
we haven't done this for a month. They put the show on hold for a month, but we were doing it for more than a month before that.
Yeah.
About 3 months ago, we started doing this.
Yes.
And we got about a month left. So.
And when we originally did this, we were actually technically a little bit behind. But this week it just came out, so we're back to schedule when it comes, right down to it. If you don't know, this is DancingSean. He's on YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel and find him there also. But we're just going to dive right into episode 8. This is actually yes.
If I can point out that I just made a video on YouTube trying a thorough breakdown of how they're using the colors in Better Call Saul. Spent about an hour talking about it, and I went through. Anyone who's watching this, even superficially, has probably noticed, how often they use red. It's kind of connected to crime,
Yes.
And yellow and blue and green are also pretty prominent. But I went into purple and black and brown and on and on. I did my best to kind of I've been studying a show. I've gone through and rewatched a bunch of episodes. I've been trying to find interviews with the showrunners and everything, and the show's got a lot to analyze in general, but specifically color has particular meaning. They're definitely telling a story by using color. And so I tried to find good examples of each one and try to narrow down, like a green. If I can go on a little bit of a tangent here, we probably even talked about this a little before, but green, a lot of times in the show it makes sense for green to represent something along the lines of greed or money or success, and in general that's kind of green can be used for that symbol too. Excuse me. But I realize that's not quite necessarily how they're using it. There's a lot of crossover, but I think green actually means something along the lines of a facade, something that's covered or protected or hidden or disguised or safe. That realm, those are all slightly different, but they're all kind of in the same realm. And a lot of times when you see an example of money, which maybe also could be associated with greed or success or something, sometimes it's also with something that's being hidden or protected. One of the best examples, when I talked about this before, I don't even know if I noticed this one to point out to you, Eric, but and I think somewhere in the first or second episode, remember part of what sets up the whole plot for the show is when Saul is trying to get the Kettleman's case, and they go with Hamlin instead of him. And so he gets those skaters that try to scam him. He gets them to try to be part of a scam on the Kettlemans. They're gonna pretend to be hit by Betsy Kettleman's car, and then instead of calling 911, call Saul, and Saul can show up and be the hero and save the day, right? But it just turns out that Tuco's grandmother, Tuco, like a villain from the Breaking Bad world, her grandmother has the same car as the Kettlemans, and so the skaters hit that car. They go home with the grandmother who barely speaks English, and Tuco's there, and of course, he gets mixed up in things. He's mad. Saul shows up. They're just trying to get a few $100. They're like, hey, you hit us with your car, give us a couple $100, we won't call the cops.
Right.
But so Tuco's grandma has a purse, a green purse, and now that makes sense. Money, right? The purse represents money, but in reality, that purse is protected. It's covered. There's no way these skaters are getting Tuco's grandma's money. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's not so much that it represents money, it's that her money is protected. There's another example early on when the Kettlemans are missing. It's convoluted how they get there, but Saul knows they can't have skipped town. So Saul knows that they weren't kidnapped and they weren't killed. But he's trying to figure out where they are. Nacho's been arrested as a suspect, and Nacho's telling Saul, if you don't figure this out, you're a dead man. I don't care if it's your fault or not. You're mixed up in this now. You better get me out of jail. And so Saul's trying to figure out what's going on. He goes to the house where cops are investigating. He talks to detectives. They're looking for clues. And we see on the wall, there's a picture of the Kettleman's daughter on the wall. And that picture is framed in green. The little girl is hidden, safe, protected. She's not kidnapped. She's not dead. And I don't think that little girl is mixed up with greed or money. Does that make sense? That the green in that scenario can't mean success or greed or something like that, but it does make sense for her to be protected and hidden. And I think some of the scenarios where you see green might match up with greed or money somehow, but they always match up with a facade, with protection, with cover. And there's all kinds of other scenarios where you do see greed or money and green is not there, like when Lalo brings Don Eladio. Don Eladio is a greedy character. Lalo's bringing him a gift, a fancy car full of money. There's no green. Lalo's not in green. Eladio's not in green. The car's not green. It seems like if green represented greed or money, there should have been some green there, and there wasn't. So it made me realize green doesn't mean greed or money. Anyway, big tangent. Didn't mean to go off on that so much, but just wanted to point out, if you start looking for it, you'll see the colors have consistent meanings. And I try to make a video about all of that. So
yeah. All right. So I guess we're going to be diving into episode 8. Now, episode 7 left off on a massive cliffhanger. You know, you had Jimmy and Kim, they were in their apartment, and Howard comes over. They we're scheming. They're doing something to basically screw with Howard. And Howard comes over there, and you know, he was mad. I mean, he had a legitimate reason of being pissed, and he just, you know, he was there to almost get like a resolution, even though he knew he probably wasn't going to get it, but he was going to have his say. And Lalo comes in and messes up, obviously. No one expected that. Howard doesn't even know who he is, and Howard gets killed, you know, and they just left it off right there. And this episode continues that. And I felt like this episode was just like nonstop, like just like intensity, yeah, you know, like it wasn't like, you know, suspense. Here's this scene and then here's this next scene. It was like everything just like, you know, happened within like an hour in this episode, you know, as in like the hour, the episode's an hour.
I see. I tried to find the word you were looking for when I said suspense, but I think what you meant was progressing chronologically. They don't like jump back and forth between characters or skip to the next day or the next week. They go from one moment to the next to the next. Yeah.
And it was intense.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, which adds to the suspense, the intensity. Yeah. I wanted to point out, by the way, I got to thinking about, you know, we only have a few episodes left. There's a lot to cover. We can get into details this episode.
Exactly.
But on sort of a bigger picture, I was thinking about like where things are going.
I want to talk about this. I'm similar, but anyways.
Yeah, and I was wondering what kind of time jump there might be. Like we know they don't necessarily have to jump to the future, but it seems like they want to connect what's going on in this Better Call Saul timeline story world with the Breaking Bad storyline and the Gene storyline post Breaking Bad. So assuming they want to get some connection, all that, we're probably going to have to take some time jumps. I think we're, you know, 5-ish years ahead of the beginning of Better Call Saul, and I think it's 5 more years about past that to Gene. So anyway, I did a little research. And do you know, Eric, do you have a guess? Flint, do you have a guess the total length of the whole timeline of all we've seen in Better Call Saul? Not counting flashbacks, not going back to like
I tried to figure this out,
Jimmy or when he was a kid or something. But how long do you think of the Better Call Saul main story timeline is?
So if I had to guess in general, Breaking Bad starts in around 2005. I could be wrong on that, but it's somewhere around there. I know Walter got his degree because they pointed us out like early on. I didn't catch it until I rewatched it in 1985. But you know, like the Breaking Bad was set in the time it was filmed, if I'm correct, which it was around 2005, 2008, somewhere around there. You know, and
I think it was closer to 2008. Although you know,
you may be right.
It spans a couple years, but
which means that Gene has to be. So Breaking Bad took 5 seasons. Assume each season's a year. I actually don't know if it's really accurate, but let's say roughly it's a year. You know, year per season.
Definitely not in Better Call Saul. Just so you know.
I figured that. But Breaking Bad, if it's 5 years and it started in 2008, that means everything's going to stop in 2013. which means that Gene is going to be somewhere around there, 2013. That's my guess. So this show, if I had to guess, is somewhere around 2000, but because it doesn't feel like the 90s, even though sometimes it does. But they have like internet and all that, and well, I guess you could argue internet was in the 90s, but like it wasn't that big in the 90s. Used. Yeah, exactly. Like I remember.
It's not even that commonly used in Better Call Saul. Like,
exactly. Oh yeah, so that's why I thought it was.
You see them Google something or whatever.
Yeah, that's why I think it was like in 2000, because 2000 internet was starting to kind of become big, but still wasn't big. I mean, I'm trying to think of when I had internet. God, we had not the DSL, that little like
little modem connection.
Yeah, that was like 2000.
Yeah,
and for one, I don't remember hearing that. That's to say that they could bypass that, but in general, my point is, I think that Better Call Saul was probably 2002, 2003. That's my guess. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah. I assume you're going to know.
Better Call Saul is approximately 2002 to 2004.
Man, I'm so good.
All 6 seasons have been about 2 years.
Okay. Oh,
and
okay.
I think Breaking Bad is approximately 2008 to 2010.
Oh. Okay.
Maybe a little bit more on either side of that, but I'm pretty sure Gene is 2011.
Okay.
Maybe it might be like winter 2010, or it might be 11. It might be 2012. It might be like December 2010 or January 2012. But I think it's around 2011. But this is the thing, kind of connected to all this we're talking about.
Right.
Almost every episode of the show is just the next day. Almost every time an episode ends and the next one starts, it's just the next day, or maybe the next hour, maybe the next week, but they almost always pick up right where they left off.
That is true.
And each episode usually only lasts a few days. Sometimes the episodes only last 2 or 3 days. Sometimes maybe a week or a month. But most episodes only last a few days, and almost every episode picks up right where the last one left off.
And
so that makes me think that this next episode is probably going to pick up right where it left off. I was wondering if there was a chance that they might jump from this moment into Breaking Bad, or closer to Breaking Bad. I was wondering if they might jump like a year ahead and see Jimmy and Kim living together in a mansion, and he's Saul now and she's still working pro bono cases, or something along that line. I don't exactly expect that, but I'm just wondering, at what point are they going to jump forward? It seems like at some point they got to move toward the Breaking Bad timeline and or Gene, and maybe they could do some back and forth like they have been doing with Gene in the past. We get like these opening scenes with Gene each episode. Maybe they start that. Here's one little clue, by the way. Shoot, I forgot, but I think the next episode, which is episode 9, right? I think it's going to follow this pattern. The titles have all had this pattern of X and Y.
Yes.
Point and shoot, wine and roses, right? And I think the next one is the same thing. Yeah, exactly. And I think the next one is the same thing. But I think the one after that, I think episode 10, its title is something like Cold or something like that. It breaks that X and Y format. So it's making me think that that's probably when they're going to either jump forward to Breaking Bad or to Gene, or some other shift in what they're showing us is going to happen. But I think next episode is going to just pick up right where this one left off.
Which makes sense, because there's a lot of interesting things that could be happening. Like a lot of characters having to make certain decisions from what just happened. And we'll get into that, the predictions.
As long as I'm talking about it, I want to point out there was the one big time jump that they've had in the main Better Call Saul period was in, I think it was season 4. It was when Saul had lost his license. In the time period when Saul doesn't have his license and he's like selling the cell phones, and there's a little bit in that time period of like him and Kim were kind of drifting apart. I think it's the episode that was called Something Stupid. There was a series of episodes that were called something like Something Beautiful, Something Unforgivable.
Is this where he calls her, or where he tells Francesca to answer the phone or something like that?
That was a flash forward. That episode was called Quite a Ride.
Okay.
And that was the episode where Mike took the German workers out and sent them back to Germany after Werner had been killed. And it was also we get like a flash forward scene. In fact, I can't remember if we talked about this. I went digging. I remembered there being a scene. I remember from Better Call Saul, there was a moment where they're gonna ship Jesse off. They're gonna like have him disappear. The vacuum guy's gonna make him disappear. Jesse backs out of it because he figures out how Saul and Walt were conniving to poison that kid, and Jesse like goes back. He like punches Saul. He's like mad. He's got his gun. And so Jesse doesn't end up going. But then a few episodes later, we see we see Jimmy showing up with the vacuum cleaner guy, and he's got like suitcases. He's ready to go. Walt is there with the vacuum cleaner guy. The vacuum cleaner guy is having a harder time dealing with Walt's identity because it's like more of a, I don't know, like a manhunt out for him or whatever. Point, they have some interaction. Anyway, I remember Jimmy like scrambling in his office. He like tore out the wall to get cash or something, and he gave Francesca a bunch of instructions about what to do and make a phone call, all this stuff. And I was looking for that episode in Breaking Bad, and I knew it had to be toward the end. And so I watched one episode, and like it wasn't that one. Maybe it was the one after that. Well, maybe it's the one before that. And I watched like 6 or 7 episodes, and finally I realized it wasn't in Breaking Bad. It was a flash forward in Better Call Saul. Yeah, that Quite a Ride episode. He says to Francesca, "Well, it's been quite a ride, you know." But,
that's funny.
Anyway, it refreshed me on a lot of happenings of.
Yeah, I want to watch episode or season 5 because I feel like that there's certain things that could be key to, you know, like how they're going to connect it or try to connect it, you know, which they have been doing really well, the writing. So, I have been watching the earlier season, so you know, there's the scene when Saul basically gets introduced into Breaking Bad, and that's really interesting. Seeing how they've been
around the end of. Or
at the season 6. I'm sorry, 6. Season 2, yes. That's episode 9 is when he gets introduced. Actually, the episode is called Better Call Saul. But I forgot, you know, they had an episode like that. So, yeah, it's been really interesting and neat seeing how, what's the word when like you do a well job of connecting things. But anyways,
they tied it all in. They're very careful about everything, accounting for every little piece of the plot and character that were introduced then to have it come back into play and still make sense now.
Yes. But like I said, we're going to talk about that, especially closer to the end, because there's a lot of prediction stuff that I'm wanting to talk about.
Yeah. So as you were saying, this episode is sort of set up by
Lalo.
Most of this season so far has been this con that Jimmy and Kim are running on Howard, and that's been sort of the central plot line. And in the background, we've also seen Lalo. Lalo's trying to figure out what Gus is up to.
Yes.
So we've seen, as far as everyone knows, they think he's dead. Gus suspects that he's not. And Lalo is tracking down what Gus is doing with the lab. In the meantime, Jimmy and Kim have successfully pulled off this scam on Howard, which quite embarrasses him and is, you know, it's going to be damaging to his career, his friendships and whatnot. But also it's going to end up meaning $1 million or more for Jimmy and Kim. And so Howard, understandably, shows up their house, frustrated, confused, you know, kind of wanting answers for them. At the same time, Lalo, who has figured out that Jimmy and Kim have some kind of connection with Gus, and so Lalo has showed up there looking for answers too. And so Lalo, you know, there's a moment of confusion, moment of horror of Jimmy and Kim because they know how dangerous Lalo is. Howard doesn't realize what's happening, and suddenly Lalo kills him, and the episode just ends, and we're left on this moment.
Yeah.
Now we pick it up this episode.
Now, this is like another, I guess, little tangent. It's rare, I feel, that TV shows do cliffhangers and successfully don't piss off people. It's like a lot of times people are like, why do they live off on a cliffhanger? Can they just showed more? They just did this brilliantly, you know, because obviously there's more to tell. Like they have a whole nother episode to explain the continuation of that event, that last moment event. But on top of that, it was such a neat way, I think, of ending at least a mid-season, you know. because you got to get like some resolution. But then obviously that's such a massive cliffhanger, a major character dying.
It seemed like this episode, or it seemed like last episode was. Can clarify. It seemed like episode 7 was a resolution episode.
Yep.
It seemed like the heist, if you will, that Jimmy and Kim had been developing played out in that episode. But then suddenly at the last minute, that's kind of like you're saying, it's an interesting sort of twist on a cliffhanger, because it seemed like that episode was resolution, and suddenly there's a new thing a big new thing that needs to be resolved.
Yes.
And they left us with a while to think about it too, because there was this break in the middle of the season. And so like another little thing that had been set up like episodes prior that's going to come into play that maybe people figured out because we had so much time, or even I started to overthink it and wonder if there's another angle going, but how Gus had set up that gun in the lab,
Yes. Also, what was I going to say? I forgot, but I'll probably remember later. But anyways, so I guess we'll just start the episode. The episode starts off with a lovely little beach. Someone went on vacation. It happened to be Howard and but no, they show this like beach, and for one, the cinematography in the scene is freaking brilliant. I just like loved everything about how the cinematography was in the scene. They show like an upper view of the ocean or the tide coming in. They show a shoe, and you realize it's Howard's shoe because it's like no one has that fancy of a shoe. There's only a particular amount of people. Even the guy who played Howard, he talked about how his suit was so freaking expensive. It was more than his paycheck. Like, Howard just has style, and But anyways, so the shoe washes up, and I realized, I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be how he's set up to have done a suicide. He jumped into the ocean and died, but this is how they film. Like they do like a pan away from like the beach, which, by the way, technically of how they do like the tide's coming in, the camera's panning out, freaking gorgeous looking. I don't know how they did that, because it was just so subtle, but like, so I don't know. Anyways, technical details are freaking awesome.
Like a technical cinematic question too.
Yeah.
How were they getting that shot? What was moving the camera without making marks on the ground?
Yes.
It looked like there was maybe one set of footprints, probably meant to be Howard's, with the shoe. Like, he walks off into the ocean, I guess, is like what they're trying to stage there. But someone had to be holding that camera. At a minimum, one person holding the camera had to be there. So
no, maybe they used a crane. I think they may have decided to use a crane on that, because you're right. Like, how are they going to get not to get footprints? With cranes could do that, obviously, because it's freaking in the air. Well, big arm.
Talking about how do they set this up? Never mind how they film it. Let's just say that the filming is magic. Let's just say that God presents us with the image, okay, and you don't have to have a crew of people filming it. But we know what's being filmed, what's being presented is something that was staged. We know Howard didn't actually walk off into the ocean. He was shot in the head. Yeah. So whoever staged this, how did they do it with only one set of footprints?
Oh, yeah. I
thought of at least one answer. They could have just carried Howard's body on there. Well, no, Howard's body's not even there.
No, it's not.
We know Howard's body's not there. But what they could have done is walked into the beach, dropped off one of Howard's shoes, walked a little farther into the water, dropped off one. Then once they're in the water, walked down to the beach and come back up on another spot. So anyway,
no, you're right.
There's plenty of ways they could have done it. But I had to think for a second about both how what was staged was done and how they filmed.
Yeah. So. Hey, Joke, 6443. Welcome to the chat. There's just someone in the chat. But yeah, go ahead.
Person in chat, be warned, we're all on spoilery talking about Better Call Saul. The big spoilery moments happened in the past couple episodes, so if you're worried at all, we're gonna spoil it. I hope you've seen the show, and if you haven't, I think the show is so good, even if we spoil it for you now, you'll still want to go back and watch it anyway. It shows, I think, maybe the best show of all time. I really believe that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
no, you're right.
We got to be able to talk about without spoiling it. So.
But yeah, no, it makes sense. But the staging
made it more. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the staging is like like obviously Mike knows what he's doing and his crew seems to be very well at what they do, but still thinking like trying to think how they do that stuff is sometimes you're like, how did they do that?
And they did make it clear in case you didn't figure out through context or the shoes. They back up. You see the car
Yes.
with the Namaste license
Yes.
plate. And they also show on the dashboard of the car Howard's wallet and
and
wedding ring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
sort of indicating,
it was Howard's car.
Symbol that he's leaving or whatever.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I remember like thinking when I watched this scene, because this is the very first shot, the intro shot, is Mike must have done this, which means Mike eventually resolves the situation. I thought that to a degree.
I don't think Mike did it, just so you know. I think he sent someone else to do it.
Well,
Mike's
no,
still around. He's like talking to Gus. He's down in the vault.
Oh, I meant
had to have been done overnight.
I meant to say that like Mike got this going. Like he didn't personally do it
to get this done.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So whatever happens in the next scene or the rest of this episode, Mike's somehow going to resolve at least Howard. Like he's going to find Howard probably. That I thought that at least, but
you're saying from watching the opening sequence, you assume Mike set that up, which meant you assume Mike was getting involved with however else the rest of it played out.
Now I didn't know if this was going to be this episode or next episode or the episode after that. Like I didn't know when it was going to be resolved.
Yes. Through it all. Yeah.
So that was like going in the back of my head as we go into the next scene. It was the next thing they show like a candle, the candle that we watched as it flickered to see Lalo or anybody who entered, but mainly Lalo enter. And then it like pans out and you see blood, and you see the blood on the table, you see the blood on the painting in the wall, and like this. Actually, it's a really nice shot of the blood on the floor and like a bullet. And obviously this is like just going into giving us the mindset of getting back into this like really intense and sad moment, and also the acting was it's really good. Like Kim and Saul.
Something else I forget to make a point of sometimes too, but the audio. If you remember, they kind of slowly brought the voices in. It was like kind of silent and maybe music or whatever playing, but slowly they brought forth the conversation, the panic in Kim and Jimmy's voices. The audio of the scene gradually came into play.
That is true. And Lalo was the one who like kind of like snaps them out of it, and almost like us too. It's like double meaning, I guess. So you're right. Everything about it is like just so well done, so well thought out. But Lalo just tells him get on the chair, and I was trying to think, like we kind of like predicted that Lalo was going to use Jimmy to arrange possibly a meeting with Lalo and Gus. And obviously that didn't happen at all. Not exactly like that at all.
It sort of did. We were a little off on the how.
Yes.
But the end result, like we thought that Lalo would use a threat on Kim's life as leverage to get Jimmy to do what he wanted.
Yes.
That's exactly what happened.
Yes.
And we thought that Lalo wanted to have a meeting with Gus, probably in the lab. That's exactly what happened.
Yep. No, you're right.
A couple of the steps in the middle, but fundamentally, we were correct about the direction that things were going.
Yes. I like how Saul, when he's on, Lalo for one, he's like, okay, this is what's going to happen. I don't even care what you guys are pretty much pawns to me. Like, and he like gives them like directions. He's like, you're going to go to basically Gus's house and kill him.
Yeah.
You guys are going to, one of he directs Jimmy to do this.
He's so calm and matter of fact about it.
It
adds to his menacing nature.
Exactly.
He's got a little bit of a smile on his face. It's like, and you'll find directions and a gun. It's easy to use. It's already loaded. Don't worry. And you just drive to his house, you pull out the gun, and you shoot him.
Yeah.
And then you come back here. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I delivery is so amazing, and it like added to the scene because like you said, like how calm he was and how frantic or scared Jimmy and Kim are. I mean, I was like scared for both of them, even though I thought they were going to be fine. I still was like terrified. I didn't know exactly like, and I love how like Jimmy's like, don't send me, send Kim, which I knew he was trying to save Kim. He's like, I don't care about myself. I just want her safe. Which was really smart and almost like gutsy and brave. And he had to like get back some of his composure and be like almost like Saul, like convince Lalo that he should, that he needs to send Kim. So another really
reminds
nice.
me of the scene in the beginning when he's got to convince Tuco to not kill the skaters.
Yes,
Kind of
you're right.
spins this argument out of nothing.
No.
Like he's got, it's like a court case where he's just stuck on the losing side, and he's got to come up with something to save his life or the person he loves life, and he does it.
And and his reasoning does make sense. Like a guy coming at nighttime to somebody's house, and he uses that, like a good argument basically, and Kim's just this innocent woman. She could have had her car messed up, and she just needs help. I mean, it all makes sense, and how he comes up with it so fast, and it is impressive.
That said, we learned clearly it didn't really matter.
Nope.
It wasn't so much that Lalo's like, good idea, let's switch it up. Lalo was more like, I don't care. You can both die for all I care. I don't even expect you to get Gus. This is just a distraction.
Yes.
That's why he gave in.
I also love like he was actually getting a little bit frustrated because they were like bantering back and forth, Jimmy and Kim, and he's like, I don't care. Like just, she could go. Because like if you like watch his acting, it's really funny. Like how almost annoyed he was because he's like, I didn't. It's almost like he didn't sign up for it.
This guy, and I'm gonna kill you. And you're arguing. Shut up! I don't care. She could go. Whatever.
So yeah, it's really fun. So after this, obviously, Lalo lets Kim go, and he says it's going to take an hour. It takes like 20 minutes to get there, 20 minutes back, maybe 10 minutes to do the job. He's like, I'll just round it up to an hour. I don't see you in an hour. You're going to die, or I'm going to kill, the other person who's here, which is Jimmy. Which we know that Jimmy's going to survive because, well, spoiler.
But Kim doesn't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But it also what made me like wonder, Mike. Yeah, Kim's probably safe, but like, well, okay. For one, to keep the continuity in Breaking Bad, Jimmy never meets Gus, so it makes sense that writing wise that they had to do this.
He doesn't necessarily never meet Gus. We never see them meet on screen, but it's never.
No, he says it.
Well, even if it has been said, it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah,
Jimmy would just lie about that. Gus would tell him to lie about that. We never met. You don't know who I am. That
but they may like. Cover. I was thinking that they may want to keep it because, like in Breaking Bad, when Saul introduces Walter to Gus, he's like, "I learned this from another friend." Basically, he's talking about Mike, I think.
Right. I had that same thought, except I still think Jimmy wouldn't say, like, I know this guy named Gus who runs a chicken restaurant and he can hook you up as a drug dealer. He would never say that. He would not reveal the
his
actual connection he has.
That's true. But I just thought it was nice that they at least could have kept to the continuity of it, And
I think that Jimmy did meet Gus.
He has not.
Might depend on how you mean meet, but he encountered him in the restaurant. I'm pretty sure they talked to each other in the restaurant.
I thought they haven't. Maybe you're right.
Better Call Saul. There's a point when Mike was scouting out the restaurant and he and Jimmy went inside. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they're like sitting at a table. And Gus comes up just like he did the wall. It's like, may I help you? Are you guys finding everything okay? He didn't necessarily know who Gus was or what the relevance was at that moment, but
yeah, maybe that could be. Because I thought they haven't met before. I thought that was like one of the few characters who haven't met each other in Better Call Saul. But maybe you're right. But anyway,
I'm not confident, but I expect Jimmy and Gus know each other pretty well.
I figure they do. They've heard it. Yeah. They definitely know.
They've got to have been working together on some level a bunch of times.
Right.
That is something we'll probably learn a little bit more about, the actual nature of their relationship as in these next few episodes.
Yes.
But I'm assuming they are quite aware of each other. Maybe they haven't sat in an office and had a discussion a bunch of times, but they've got to know who each other are. They've got to have communicated on a phone, or at least through Mike or something. So
right, that's true. So you have Kim drives over to Gus's house. On the way, she runs into some cops, but she says nothing. Like it almost looks like she's, because they're on the road or she's at a red light, and she rolls down her window. It looks like she was about to like call for help, but she winds up not doing it.
Like, what does she say? Like, whatever
exactly.
she says there, they have to immediately believe her and act on it. Because if it takes too long, 20 minutes or whatever will pass, and even if they do believe and act on it, what if they show up, sirens blazing in a parking lot, Lalo hears it, shoots Jimmy, jumps out the window? Like,
exactly.
What can she think? How much she has to explain, how quick she has to explain it. They have to believe it, and how quick they have to react without, in a way that doesn't end up getting Jimmy killed. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And maybe there is a way for all that to happen, but Kim has like 7 seconds to come up with it, right?
Yep. Yeah,
it's not like she had 10 minutes to think. Like, we get to think about it for the next 24 hours after we watch this episode. She had 7 seconds sitting at a stoplight to try to figure out what to do. She wasn't able to. I don't know if haven't thought about it for a couple days. I still don't know what I would have said, what she should have done.
Yeah,
so
yeah, no, it's completely understandable. And you're right. I don't know either. So she makes it over to Gus's house, and again, very well shot. Because like the intensity. I mean, it was just her walking to a door. And that was like felt like it was. I don't say dragged on, but like you just felt the weight of that scene. And like and she just Kim just does such an amazing job of acting. But she opens the door and is ready to shoot because she was willing to go through it. And Mike or a bodyguard hits her from the back, like tackles her into the room or to the house.
I'm pretty sure it was Mike. It seemed like
it looked like Mike. I thought it was Mike.
Back, yeah. I want to make a couple other points about this moment, by the way. One, that scene mirrored the moment in Breaking Bad when Mike kind of made up his mind to kill Gus. And he also drove to Gus's house, and he used the same above shot of the cars parked on the corner and of them walking
you mean Walter?
up the sidewalk toward the house. Yeah, Walter White
was
going
to
kill Gus.
Yeah.
Did I say Mike? I might have said the wrong thing.
Yeah. But I remember, yeah.
And Walt's got a gun, and he's walking towards the door. And similarly, Mike stops him. His phone rings, and he answers it. And
he
it's
goes, go
Mike
home.
Says, "Go home, Walt." And so Mike also stops Kim. They use like the same imagery and camera, and it's Mike that stops them both. And I thought that was really good. And it's there's this extra layer of going back and watching Breaking Bad now that we understand how Walt knew that. How Mike knew Walt was coming, because we now know about all the surveillance around the house.
Yes, yes.
Also, Kim seemed like she was gonna go through it.
I think she would have.
Through with it. She might not have in that moment. She might not have actually pulled the trigger. She might not have actually pulled the trigger. But she got. If you're gonna like measure steps along the way, she was on step 99 out of 100, right?
Yep.
Which is, I think Jimmy expected, hoped that Kim would just run away and not come back. Just call the police. He was willing to sacrifice himself to save, not only to save her, like I think they were both assuming whoever stays in this room with Lalo is dead.
Yep.
Right.
Like, rather it be
even
him.
If the other person goes and kills the target and comes back, probably they're both gonna just be killed after that, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And so I think that in Saul's mind, he's like, I just need to get Kim out of here. I'll die or whatever. Maybe she'll go and kill this guy and come back. I don't know. I hope she just calls the cops, but I just need to get her out of this room.
Exactly.
And she can make a better decision from there, but we can't discuss it right now. We can't debate. We can't figure it out, but our lives are in danger. I need to get her out of this danger, and she can figure it out from there. Now, once she's out of there, she's equally worried about Jimmy. She's like, okay, now I'm out of there. What can I figure out? And, so far, the best she figured out was just keep going with the plan. Just, she seemed willing to kill someone else to hopefully save Jimmy.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I expect that's going to weigh on her. I expect that's going to be part of what we see in the next couple episodes is how she reconciles what she was about to do, the position they were put in, etc.
Yes. So in the house, you have Mike and a couple of bodyguards. It's one of the major guards. I can't remember his name. He was in Breaking Bad. He's also there.
Victor, I think.
His name's Victor. Okay. Yeah, I can't.
Sure.
And you have Gus, looking at them through a monitor, in the safe house. And Mike's like wondering, like, what were you planning on doing? And she pretty much reveals, Lalo's alive, Lalo's at our place. He wanted me to kill that library person, and they point to like the body double, it looks like, which I thought was really funny. Yeah. This shows how detailed they are in their operation, Mike is and Gus. And so Mike, thank you, Barry, Win, for the follow. So you have Mike, he just gets his whole group. He's like, call Tyrus and tell him to get over to, Saul's place. And they just pretty much are ready to like just take him out, like they're getting as many people as they possibly can. But they do leave Gus behind with a couple of bodyguards. They do leave a couple of people at the laundry building. And you see a shot of Tyrus, because he's at the laundry building right now. He's guarding him. He takes a couple of his men and he goes, and you see a couple of them stay behind, and you see Lalo pop up. He's like hiding in a car. And that was his target the whole time, or his plan the whole time is to get as few of people out of that place so he could film it, because he's trying to get proof for Don Eladio.
If we're gonna keep up with the details running through the plot, Lalo told Saul, once Kim left, told Saul, okay, I'm gonna be back, and then left. And I don't know if Lalo planned on coming back or not. He might have, but
yeah, I was debating about that too.
He did not seem to be trying to get right back on time to for Kim to be there or whatever. He was trying to get to the laundry. He's creating a new distraction, just like he created before.
Yep.
It is interesting to think about, if Kim had killed Gus and gotten back to Jimmy, then what did they do? Did they call the police? Is she on time? I think Lalo was assuming whoever went on this mission to kill Gus was also not going to make it, right? That's why it doesn't matter who goes. You're not going to succeed. He's got guards. He's ready. They think I'm coming. You think you're going to pull this off? Like, so.
Yeah. No, you're right. It is neat to see how he makes this extra distraction almost, because he was planning just to go in there and killing the few guards already. And he knew that he like made this diversion to Gus and Mike. They overheard it when when Lalo was calling Hector, saying that he's going to Gus's place and he's going to kill him. So they're already like there, like they're already out of this laundry area. There's probably a little bit more guards than he wants, but like he probably could have took care of them. It seems like Lalo's capable enough to like sneak in and ambush a place if he needs to. But he wanted to make this extra diversion, and it would have been interesting if Gus died. But I think he knew that there's no way Gus was going to die. Like
even if Kim had done her mission, she would have just killed the body double for
exactly
Gus, not actually Gus. And when she does that, 14 people mobilize. They hear a gunshot. They see it on camera. They go running after her.
Yeah.
She's not. They're not gonna be like, oh, you killed the wrong guy. Never mind. You can go. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
She didn't kill Gus. Let her go.
Yeah. It would have been interesting.
Where's
obviously.
She going? It doesn't matter.
So Lalo makes it over, and he goes into the building. He goes in through like some like outside vent, like it has like a fan, like vent it to get in there. And there's like I said, there's a few guards. Like I think we see one, maybe even one, like that watches the monitor, and he was like out in the entrance, so he had to walk all the way back to get to the monitor. So but there may be 2 or 3, who knows? But it's not that much for him to deal with or take care of. Now, did Lalo think that Gus was actually going to come there? Like, I debated about that. I don't know if that was like, he was like, this is an extra bonus, or I thought this was going to happen, or I debated about that one, but obviously it didn't matter to him because he needed to find this laboratory. He had technically enough time, until Gus got there. And then you could argue he had a time limit. He's like, okay, Mike's probably going to be on his way, so let's make this fast. Like you have like 15 minutes or something,
I think that Lalo might have anticipated Gus showing up for the same reason that Gus did show up. Remember when Gus asks Kim, he's communicating is someone else because he's not in the same room. He can see her in a monitor and whatever else. But the point is, she explains that Lalo was gonna send Jimmy to come here and do this, but
Yes.
sent me instead. I got to get back. He's gonna kill him, and Gus is like, wait, he talked Lalo out of sinning,
Yes.
and at first Gus it's like he's taken aback because the idea that Jimmy's good enough to talk Lalo out of something. What Gus realizes is, wait a minute, he was able to quote unquote talk him out of it because it didn't matter in the first place.
I caught
Why
that.
didn't it matter in the first place? Because this is all a distraction. This is all a red herring. He's got a different goal, which is to get to the lab.
Yeah.
And so I think if Gus can piece that together, Lalo can piece together. Gus would piece that together.
Yeah. I did think about that also, because the first time I watched it, I actually thought that Gus was like impressionist, like, I want to meet this Saul person. I thought that in the back of my head, which maybe he still does, that's like impressive to a degree. But I did catch that like he realized that it doesn't matter who came here, and Lalo has another plan. He's at the laundry chute. I need to go there, and that's why he gets to the guards that were with him. What was that?
Eric, you keep saying laundry chute, and I know you don't mean to.
Yeah, laundry.
I'm not even sure what the right word is.
Laundry mat. I think it's a laundry building. I meant to keep saying.
Laundry building, yeah. Because it's like an industrial laundry business. I'm assuming it's probably like they probably have contracts with hotels to watch like thousands of sheets a day or something like that. So it's not like a laundromat where like college kids go and put quarters in to do their laundry for the month or whatever. But it's not a laundry chute either. It's not like one chute. It's a huge structure with industrial size laundry machines. Now, underneath which that whole thing is sort of a cover for this super lab they've built to cook meth in. So.
Now, they did I think they refer to it like, Gus and Mike refer to it as the laundry, but that's just seems so vague. Yeah.
The laundry business.
Exactly.
The laundry facility.
The laundering meth. But so this is something interesting. I was trying to debate on why they did this color. So the entrance to the lab is, this big laundry machine looking thing that's blue. Why did they make it blue and not green?
Well, a couple reasons. One, keep in mind that blue does still represent legal, if you will, and the laundromat itself is
legit. Yep.
Yeah. But I think even more so than that, I think if they could like go back in time and do everything the way they wanted, they would have made it green or maybe green and blue or something like that. But it was blue in Breaking Bad. They just had a different color scheme in Breaking Bad, and so there's certain things they're still kind of stuck with from that. Like the laundromat was cast in blue.
Right. That makes sense.
People like the Pogo shirts were yellow in Breaking Bad. And in Breaking Bad, they not always, but typically they were using yellow to represent the meth trade. And so Gus is in yellow, it connects to the meth trade.
That makes sense.
But yellow in Better Call Saul means more like uncertainty or conflict. But they've already established that Polio is in the yellow uniform, so they've got to. Sometimes they're stuck with something they did before.
That makes sense.
It still mostly works out. So I think it's
yeah.
But in fact, for example, Gus, usually they haven't been putting him in yellow. They haven't been putting him in this Polio outfit in.
They've been putting him in suits. Yeah.
Right. They've been putting him in gray suits. By the way, I think gray is something along the lines of mechanical, lifeless, emotionless, heartless, lifeless, which I think, and so I think sometimes the Salamanca twins are like in gray suits. They might have like a red shirt or a red tie or something.
Well, one of them has purple and the other one has, is it orange? I think it's orange. It's like in between
I think
red.
They've had different colors at different times too. Yeah. They've had different colors at different times. But I think the point is that often they represent sort of these killing machines. Machines, lifeless, heartless, right? Cold, mechanical. Same thing with Gus. He doesn't have a lot of passion, right? He never gets angry or happy. He just is cold and steady almost the whole way. And I think so we get him in gray suits, and sometimes he might have like some red trim in his tie, or if he's meeting with the school doing some positive thing for the community, he might have blue. But if he's meeting with Madrigal, then he's got red. But anyway,
that makes complete sense.
But, when they did have him in yellow, was when he was uncertain about what was going on with Lalo, when he had figured out from Hector that Lalo was still alive, but he was like paranoid and he didn't know where Lalo was going or what he was doing. And then they had Gus go to Poto with his yellow shirt at work, so he was in this moment of uncertainty. So
they try to use it right when they can, basically.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Where are we? So I guess we'll continue with the whole Lalo and Gus. So this is something we predicted. We were 99% sure this was going to happen because they just left the foreshadows there. But Lalo gets Gus to show him the laboratory. So they go down there, and he has the speech. So for one, I guess before we get into that, I liked how Lalo shoots Gus, and he knew probably that he was going to be fine, but even though he got shot, he had a life vest jacket, or the vest to protect himself.
Bulletproof vest.
Yeah, bulletproof vest. Still freaking hurt.
Oh yeah. Bulletproof vest is not magic. It'll knock the wind out of you. It's not, if close enough, a powerful enough gun, it'll still go through and puncture your skin.
Exactly.
Break your ribs. Yeah, it's guns are no joke, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Vests aren't magic. Yeah.
And he was that was close range. It wasn't like he was 30 feet away, So I love how Gus, he tries to keep his composure, but you hear,
he got the wind knocked out of him.
Yeah. I thought that was a neat little detail that they added. But they get down to the laboratory, and Lalo is filming everything. He's been filming everything for a while. This is how he's going to prove to Don Eladio what's going on. That Gus is undermining him. And it's just fun seeing him act because he's you can tell he's I told you, this, Lalo, I meant,
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching how he was holding his gun and how he was holding the camera, and well, for one, we know that Gus is not going to do that, but also I feel in a lot of movies there's that moment where I could knock the gun out of his hand, they knock it, and then they start struggling and fighting. That didn't happen, obviously. It felt a little bit more realistic, I guess. I'm not sure how to put that, but
Lalo was careful enough to keep his distance.
Exactly.
He might have had his guard down a little bit because clearly Lalo is a little bit cocky.
Exactly.
Right? He's a little bit happy with himself for getting to this point. He's put a lot of effort into it. On some level, he deserves some credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Figuring it out, and the struggles and sacrifices and efforts and intellect that he's put into finally arriving at this moment.
The
patience has paid off. So
yeah, you could argue this is just like how Saul and Kim, did this elaborate scheme for Howard, and it paid off in episode 6. This has been going on for, it's not this season, but last season. He's been trying to figure this out for a while, Lalo, and he finally got his answer, and he was right. So I mean, of course it makes sense that he would be a little cocky and proud, and but he gets him down all the way to the bottom. And we know in the back of our head there's two things that are down here that Gus will most likely do. He's going to have the gun, but before he get the gun, he needs to turn off the power. And he walks over that line. I think it was red, if I'm correct. The power cable.
I don't think so. I think it was black, a black cable, maybe with some white and yellow trim or something. I don't.
Or maybe it was yellow. Yeah, I know they had some distinct color with it, but we knew that that was going to be the setup, but it was how it was going to happen. And Lalo's kind of does he say, do you have any last words? Or no, I think Gus was do you want to kill me? Do you want to hear what I have to say about Don Eladio first? And of course, Lala's you're dead anyways. This is just cherry on the cake, for me getting it on video. So he lets him speak, and I mean, it's pretty powerful, speech that Gus does, because he talks about Don Eladio and how he really feels about him, and then he goes into the Salamancas and how he pretty much hates him, and how he's going to kill every last one of them. And he says this right in front of Lalo, who has a gun in front of him. He's yeah, okay, that's cute,
It's pretty bold of Gus, but it's you might appreciate the scene even a little extra.
Huh?
I don't know if this would have occurred to me At least not yet. I might have eventually got there after I rewatched it enough times, or maybe eventually I'm gonna hear someone else mention it. But it mirrors the scene. I don't know if it was Gus. I don't know if it was the writer, someone in the show. I don't remember if it was Giancarlo Esposito or the writer of the episode. I think it was the writer of the episode. They said that what was supposed to be happening here is Gus learned something from Nacho. Remember Nacho when they had him? They're
Yeah.
about to execute him, and he's got
Oh.
his hands are tied up, but he's got that piece of glass hidden in his hand.
Yeah.
But it probably takes him a minute to get that cut, right?
Yeah.
And he's buying time to position himself by going off on a Salamancas. And then they're kind of distracted and almost mesmerized. They're almost like their hatred of Nacho's being confirmed. All this bad stuff he's saying about them is making them feel better and better about executing him. But really, Nacho's buying time to bust free and stab Juan Bolsa.
Right.
I think that Gus is doing the same thing. He's buying time in this little speech. On some level, maybe he just wanted to get this off his chest.
Yeah.
He wanted to like see in Lalo's eyes or get his victory in. But I think he's just buying time to position himself to get the right distance, the right weight, the right shift for his foot to kick that power, to like make sure he's lined up his paces to where he knows the gun is hidden. I think the writer said that that's Gus learning from Nacho how to take advantage of this moment when you got the gun in your face to position yourself by telling them off to make your play.
No, I don't think I would have caught that. That makes a lot of sense. I may have like eventually, but like you said, that's actually very awesome. I mean, obviously, I knew that like he was like positioning himself. You know, he has to prolong it a little enough and to kick that wire. Because I was like, I know he's going to kick the wire. At what point is he going to kick this wire? You know. He also goes off of like he makes there's like the blood for blood where like I guess the Salamancas, if you kill one of them, they'll like kill you. I guess that's pretty much what that means, right? Blood for blood,
or kill your family.
Yeah. But like Gus is like, no, you guys don't even know what that means. Not really, you know. And he got his friend or his lover, I guess, killed. You know, so he's basically like downplaying them a lot. Like you would think that like Lalo maybe does to a degree, you know, like gets like irritated, but like Lalo could really go off on him, but he doesn't. Like Lalo keeps his composure really well. I thought,
that's part of his character. He has the whole way in every moment, every situation. The most frustrated he got was when he was tailing Mike. I don't know if you remember that. Mike he used his gum to jam up the machine to get out of the parking booth or whatever, and Lalo's like, he rams another car. That was the one time he kind of lost his cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of losing your cool, Gus loses his cool here. The most he ever has times 10. Right?
Yeah, because you don't really get to see or him talk about his feelings. And yeah, you're right. He spills his feelings pretty much right here.
Well, not just that. I'm thinking more after the fact when he kicks that wire.
Oh yeah.
Dives over toward where he has the gun hidden. Lalo unloads his gun, and it all happens really fast and in the dark.
You know, I actually didn't even know that Gus fired his gun because it happened so fast. Yeah. I actually thought that I was like, wait, when did he fire? Rewatching, you see it, you know, because it's like 2 bangs from Lalo, and then Lalo just unloads. But at the same time he's unloading, Gus is unloading because he finally got the gun. It's
Gus
insane.
is better in a slightly better position too because he can aim at the light from Lalo's camera.
Yes,
right?
I was like thinking that. Yes,
if they even have it better lit than it would have been in reality because they have to film it. Does that make sense? But if you can imagine, it's really pitch black. But the camera that Lalo is holding is a target for Gus to aim.
And guess where that camera is
Lalo
too?
Lalo doesn't know where to aim because it's just totally dark. And so the Gus like you fires the bullets really fast, and then we see, because again they have to film it and we have to see what's happening, so there's enough light for us to see that Gus, and this is what I meant when I said we see that Gus is kind of like has lost his nerve. He unloaded the pistol, he fired his 6 bullets. Oh, everything cool right there?
Yeah, sorry, roommate. But go ahead.
Okay. We see that Gus is even after he's unloaded the bullets in his gun, he just keeps pulling the trigger anyway, even though there's no more bullets. And I think some people got confused by that. Like, was his bullets? Was he firing blanks? Why didn't he have guns? I don't think everyone realized that he had fired all the bullets, but he
Yep.
was so unnerved by the moment that he just kept pulling the trigger
Yes.
anyway.
Yes. No, I caught
Apparently
that.
believed that he lived. He wasn't sure that he got Lalo.
Yeah, because like we see from his point of view how dark it was. Like, I couldn't see anything, and did he hit him? He's like listening to him. I'm listening to, is Lalo still alive? So it makes complete sense. And then he sees the camera on the floor, or the light on the floor, which you assume he's dead, but you don't even know 100% until like you see he turns on the light and he's dead. Another thing I thought of.
Quite dead. He's been lethally wounded.
That is true. That is true.
The last look, Lalo has almost like a chuckle. It's interesting.
Yeah. I love that how he.
There.
Yeah, because did he get the last laugh? Like.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely very interesting that he laughed after seeing him. Maybe he was like admired him to a degree because he got out of that and killed him.
Laughing at the irony of it, of how close he was.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because obviously we know what happens in Breaking Bad, but like this is probably the closest Gus has been to being killed.
Yeah. And another thing I particularly appreciate about that moment is that if it was easy, if Gus had easily taken out Lalo, then it takes away from how much of a threat Lalo was.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And if you take away from how much of a threat Lalo is, then it takes away from how much of a victory it is for Gus to defeat Lalo. So I think it's good that Gus barely did it, was scared even though he did it, was wounded.
I was saying he was wounded. Yeah, like it could have been fatal. Luckily, he got enough medical help. But
yeah, like if he didn't have that bulletproof vest on, he almost definitely would have been killed. If
he
didn't
absolutely.
Have someone to immediately give him some medical attention, he probably would have ended up dying just from bleeding to death.
Yeah, like we knew that Mike was on the way. It was like 15 minutes from when he spoke, and it probably was a couple more minutes since they were down there. So like Mike was probably almost there anyways. Yeah, another thing I realized too, I was like, you could argue that was like lucky that he hit him in the throat, but I just realized that the camcorder he was holding was near his head.
Yeah, near his face.
So,
yeah.
And if he's aiming toward that, but a little to the left, to the right of him, that would be his neck. So, or at least close enough, like his chest, his neck, somewhere around there, So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Which maybe is another bit of irony that I wonder if Lalo might have been realizing in his own mind. If I hadn't been trying to film this, he might not have got me.
That is true. Yes. So that kind of like resolves, at least the Gus and Lalo. There's a little bit more with Lalo at the end, but Mike, he goes to Saul's place, and
real quick.
Yes.
I want to interject a couple things.
Yes.
One is something I forgot to mention earlier.
Yeah.
That when Jimmy, after Lalo leaves and Jimmy's trying to like move himself around, I don't know exactly what he's trying to do or hoping to do, but he ends up tipping his chair over and landing right in front of Howard.
Yeah.
The way he's laying there looking at Howard, that's just like how Gus was laying there looking at Max. And the whole reason that Gus has this beef with the Salamancas is because they killed his lover Max. And when they did, they held his head down to the ground to look into Max's eyes as he died. So we get that same
parallel
with Saul and Howard. Yep.
I forgot about that. That's awesome. Another little thing that I caught second time around was Saul. Saul talks a lot, and Lalo knows this. Okay. Before even that, this is like a little line that was delivered from Lalo, Saul, or Kim and Jimmy. When Jimmy's trying to convince Lalo to take, let Kimmy go, or Kim go. I love Lalo's reaction when he was like, I don't know, she's a little clever. Like he's like worried that she's gonna screw up something. I don't know. I thought that was just funny. But anyway.
That Lalo gave Kim more credit than Jimmy. It's like,
exactly.
I'll let you go because you won't do anything, but she might. Yeah.
But when he's
that little bit that he gave there, one is it added to Jimmy and Kim's like kind of back and forth
Yes.
that Lalo ends up getting frustrated with. He engaged them for just a moment there. It added to the humor a little bit.
Yeah, like a tense situation, but really, funny line. But when Lalo is with Saul, he puts a thing over his mouth, which is a blue shirt or blue cloth, which I thought that was interesting. You know, that they that he maybe, for one, did Saul ever actually rat out Lalo? I don't think he did, right? But anyways, I just thought that was interesting that they put a blue shirt or cloth over his face. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think that he ever did rat out Lalo out or say anything about him. He seemed to still think Lalo was alive, and that episode you watched of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. He's like, didn't Lalo send you? Is this because of Ignacio or whatever? You know,
yeah, and he did. So. He says that line too. Then that's like another like this is attention to detail that they're so good at. Lalo is like, you know, Ignacio, pretty much. Well, he uses the word Ignacio, and he was like Nacho. But he was like Lalo was telling what happened pretty much to him. Like his family was just slaughtered, and it was all thanks to Ignacio. And you know who hired or who Ignacio had me meet? It was you. So basically, you're a rat. You know, he just doesn't believe him. He thinks that he's working for Nacho, or at least knows way more than he gives off.
He had something to do with it one way or the other.
Yeah. So I thought that. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up because the blue gag. It's kind of like, you know, the truth, the legal. You know, blue is like legal, good, protagonistic truth. You know, that's you know, Jimmy can't get it out because he's been gagged. Two, I appreciate it when we go back to Jimmy later and he's laying on the ground with the gag still on. Did you notice it's soaked with saliva?
Yes.
Like the area around his mouth is there, which is very realistic. Something that's not portrayed properly yet. Oh shoot, I felt one other thought in that.
Was it tying back to Breaking Bad?
The last thing that he's saying as Law is putting that gag on him, he's saying, "It wasn't me, it was Nacho."
Yep.
In Breaking Bad, the Better Call Saul episode, the first thing when Walt takes the gag off Jimmy, the first thing he says, "It wasn't me, it was Nacho."
Yes. I thought the same thing. I thought that was so great in attention to detail, and why you would think even a couple years down the line that he would say that. Like it would make sense almost. Also,
the thought is still in him to try to convince Lalo it wasn't me, it was Nacho. Yeah.
Also, you know, you wonder why does he say Lalo? You know, he may think that Lalo's dead. He doesn't think he's dead. Like we even get that when Mike comes back and is talking to Jimmy and Kim, and he's like, "But Lalo said he's coming back," and Mike's like, "He's not coming back." He's like, "But he said he is." He's like, and Mike's like, "No, he is not coming back." He didn't say he was dead, but he implied it. Yeah. But Jimmy didn't believe him.
Even if he had said he's dead, Jimmy still might not believe him.
Exactly. Because he just came back to life.
Told him he was dead. He's already been told Lalo's dead, and now here he is in front of him. Like
exactly.
You understand why he wouldn't necessarily believe it. But I think they were careful in how they read it. Careful in how they wrote it.
Yes.
To make it clear in the future why Jimmy might still think.
Yes.
It, but,
and I have to admit, that was probably a challenging thing to do, but they pulled it off, you know.
Yeah.
And I can't help but give them like props for that, because that is very tricky, that line almost to deliver, and it makes sense and believable. So Mike, you know, he comes there, saves Jimmy, and basically fixes everything that just happened. He realizes Howard's dead. He needs to take care of this. You know, he gets Jimmy a new fridge, and they put the body, you know, Howard's body in the old fridge. But they also needed to probably get rid of the fridge because he probably touched too much, you know, in the fridge, I guess. Like they're trying to make sure that Howard's fingerprints are not like everywhere. Actually, more I think about it,
It
actually,
seems like it'd be easier to wipe down the fridge and replace it. I think it was more of a time thing that they could get started on putting his body in the fridge right away
yeah,
while someone was bringing one later on. Even if it only saves 15 minutes, they only have so much time before Jimmy and Kim have to go to work in the morning,
yeah,
before people start getting up and driving their cars around the parking lot. They're trying to move quick. So
yeah.
that's
I
my best explanation.
I also just realized I was thinking they were trying to hide the fact that he was there, but they know that he was there, so they're not trying to hide that. It just occurred to me now.
Parking lot.
Yeah, because he mentioned that comment. He's like, people know that he's probably going to be here. You were the last people to see him alive. Mike gives this speech to Kim and Jimmy of like what to expect, what to do. You need to keep living this lie. You said that he was on cocaine. We made it happen. Seeing Kim's reaction, like she was like, she doesn't move really. She's like devastated or traumatized by the thing. She doesn't want to almost live this lie. It's hard to like exactly know what's going on in her head, but obviously she just doesn't look like she's happy at all with what just happened.
No, she doesn't. Yeah.
And Jimmy's reaction is interesting because he is more concerned with Kim. He keeps looking at her, like, especially when like something like when Mike's like, you're gonna have to keep living this lie. He looks at her as like, can she handle this? Almost like, is she going to be all right? Because he doesn't almost like care about himself. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I thought it was interesting too. It is neat to think about what was going on in each of their minds. Like he definitely seemed to be more concerned about her.
Hmm?
She seemed to still be more, I don't know,
processing.
shell-shocked
Yes,
over the moment. Yeah.
Because it's a lot like you witness.
Like, before they even get a chance to get over Howard being murdered in front of them, right? Like, never mind, there might be some amount of guilt in them in the first place. Yes. They're coming off this high. They're like, yay, our scam worked. Yay, we got $1 million. Oh crap, Howard just got murdered in front of us. Holy crap, we might get murdered. Holy crap, I have to go murder someone else. Like, that all happened in 1 hour, right? Like, it's a lot to resolve in your own brain. And is Kim stewing over how she's going to be able to live with this in the future? Is she stewing over how she's going to get revenge? Is she stewing over whether or not, like, one thing I started thinking about is that I wonder if Kim might also be playing out in her mind is, how do they go to work the next day? Like, as part of Mike's instructions, he's like, like, no blank stares, no staring off into space, nothing out of the ordinary.
Yes.
Stickers at the toll booth. Yeah.
He also gives them, he's like, you're going to hear about the death. Once you hear about the death from someone else, call the cops. Like I said, he's like attention to like the details of what is going to happen, and you better be prepared, because if you're not prepared, you don't have your story straight, it's all going to fall apart. And his goal is to make sure things don't fall apart.
Yeah. But think about just the nature of how that next day of work is going to go, which Kim might have already been thinking about, like how her life and how her future with Jimmy is going to go. But think and she may have already been thinking about this a little bit, but Mike is specifically trying to get them to think about their next day at work and how they got to move through it.
Yeah.
How is she going to move through like the next days of her lives? Like, what are her and Jimmy going to do when they get home from work? Are they going to sit down and watch a movie and go to bed at night and wake up and brush their teeth? And like, how do they, every day of their lives, they're each going to be a reminder to each other of this thing that happened.
Exactly.
And it's going to be tough to go through that, even if they can do it in some way that they're not blaming the other person or blaming themselves. They're still going to be constantly reminded of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, I feel like that's at least part of what's going through Kim's mind.
Yeah.
Probably Jimmy's too, but Jimmy's worried about what this means for this person he loves, for his relationship with this person, Yeah,
it was a hard scene. Like I was watching, I was like just devastated. And the fact that they also have to sweep Howard under the rug, like as if he was the villain. I was me personally, I couldn't do that. Like, well, obviously, because I probably wouldn't have done this in the first place. But if I did, that'd be really hard to live with, knowing that he wasn't the evil villain that we're making him out to be, and now we have to make it out as if he was.
Yeah. They kind of created the scenario where this could happen. Like they
Yeah.
set up the cover that Mike is using for him having been a coke addict or whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Like I can see Mike like, oh, this is just perfect.
yeah, it was even a uh, it was part of their justification, part of the rationalization. That's the word I'm looking
Yeah.
for doing this to Howard in the first place. Was that he'll be okay in the end. They
Yep.
made sure to use a drug that wouldn't be found in his system later, right?
Yep.
They recognize that like he still has this law firm and his clients. It'll be a knock in his reputation. It'll be a setback in his career, but it won't ruin his life. They didn't even necessarily know what was going on with his wife and his
Yep.
marriage in the
Yep.
first place. But now they have not only ruined his life, but his legacy. Even
Yep.
in death, he has no, I don't know, justice. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He's going to be remembered as a failure, as someone who lost control, someone who's a drug addict. You know, at least potentially.
Actually, that's interesting too. Now thinking about it, because remember in episode 7 when that guy drops the sodas or the ginger ales or whatever, and he looks over at he talks about the painting
Chuck.
of Chuck. Thank you. And he's like, Chuck has a legacy, and the guy was like, I hope I'm remembered like that. And we're thinking in the back of our head that, you know, we know that it's going to be hard on Howard, but you know, ideally he would be very similar to Chuck. Nope. It's like foreshadow of his legacy just gets trashed. You know, it's just sad. So let's see. I think that was almost the last scene. Well, the last scene is them burying Howard and Lalo in the laboratory. Which my mind just started stirring up a lot about this. For one, it's just another sad scene, you know, like just seeing him, he's going to be forgotten forever. You know, I mean, theoretically, he was going to be forgotten forever, and his legacy is just gone. I couldn't help but notice that Lalo has blue shoes. Don't know the symbolism in that, and I thought that was really interesting because, like, obviously, I think you talked about it, how he may be considered not necessarily a bad guy because he's trying to get revenge on the people who he witnessed got killed. But I don't know if there's like more to that and why they decided to make his shoes so blue. I mean, they're obvious blue, you know, and he's buried with his shoes.
And Howard is not.
Yeah, Howard's not.
Shoes, by the way. They
That's
took
funny.
his shoes. Like, so a couple thoughts here. One, in general, blue doesn't necessarily mean good guy.
Okay.
It mostly basically means that, but it means this realm of legal, positive, good, moral. But like sometimes you could be technically doing something legal but still be mean to someone or still be a bad person. And sometimes you could still be like the protagonist that people are rooting for, even if you do something that's disappointing or mean or shady or illegal. You see it's a realm that could have exceptions. Okay, so that's one thing to keep on. And one way they have exceptions is that blue and all these colors can be relative. So for example, if you have one person who's being super bad, terrible, evil bad guy, and another person who's kind of a bad guy but trying to do the right thing right now, well, you would have one in red and one in blue. Does that make sense? So, for example, I use this one a lot, but in the beginning, when Tuco's kind of wild and mad and crazy and he wants to kill the skaters and he wants to kill Saul, Nacho's trying to be the voice of reason. He's like, hey, like maybe we can find another way out of this. Saul, can you explain yourself? So, in that moment, Nacho's wearing a blue shirt. Tuco's wearing a red shirt. But Nacho overall, at least at that time period, is a bad guy. So like the next time we see Nacho, he shows up at Saul's office wanting to extort him or the Kettlemans. And Nacho's wearing a red shirt. He's driving around in a red car. But again, though, they kind of swing it as Nacho's role changes over time from being this, thug of the drug cartel to being someone trapped in a drug cartel trying to save his dad.
Yeah.
He starts wearing less red and more black and eventually gets the blue roses a tribute. So the colors can be relative, they can change as a character changes. So there are on some level, Lalo's a bad guy, right? He's a murderer. We've seen him murder multiple people. He's part of this drug cartel. But also, he's loyal to his family. You know, that's respectable. He's on his mission to figure out who attacked his home and his
Yeah.
friends and his loved ones. And so, to that end, and that element of his role that he's trying to track down this bad thing that happened to people he cared about, you could see he's a protagonist to that end. We might be rooting for him to figure out who needs to have justice served. At least on some level, relatively, you can see how he might be good. And I still don't know. I still think it's a little shaky to have him in blue shoes. I will say I'm having a hard time quite reconciling that with. It's not enough for me to throw everything out the window, because there's like maybe hundreds of examples that demonstrate it in one direction. So this one exception, I think it's more likely there's an explanation we haven't come up with yet, rather than our whole idea is wrong in the first place. But it's worth noting, one angle I'm looking at what the exception might mean is, do you remember that when Kim's about to leave, when Jimmy convinces Lalo to have Kim go instead of him, and Kim's like, okay, and she starts to head out, Lalo's like, hey, hold on, you're gonna need your shoes, right?
Yes,
She's about to leave without her shoes. I don't know necessarily what that means or how it relates to Lalo's shoes being blue, but keep that in mind when also they take Howard's shoes. They start off with Howard's shoes and on the beach. And also, if you remember, there was a moment in that time period when Kim was working for Mesa Verde, and they were like trying to build like a new bank facility, and they had to buy out all this property for like the construction and the parking lot or whatever. And there was this one guy who lived there who just refused to leave, and they offered him extra money. Technically, he didn't even own the land, it was a lease, you know, but he was just being stubborn. And Kim, her role was to get this guy to leave. And she just couldn't get through to him. She kind of knew in the end that they would just arrest him. They bulldoze his home. Like he couldn't win this. And she was trying to make it so that he at least got a payout. So at least it was like on his terms. And she came at a lot of different angles, and she tries to like relate to him personally. And she's like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I never had a home when I was a kid. And if I did, I wouldn't have wanted to leave it. Like, I understand where you're coming from. When I was a kid, my mom was always one step ahead of the landlord. She would wake me up in the middle of the night, pack our bags, and out in the streets in a car. Sometimes I didn't even have my shoes, she said. Just so anyway, I don't know if they were actively trying to remind us of that moment. It seems like a lot. It seems like a lot of shoe connections to all happen in that one episode to make me think there's more to it than Lalo had blue shoes, so really he's a good guy, or Lalo had blue shoes, so blue doesn't mean good guy. I think there's got to be some other angle.
I was thinking that too.
I'm working on it. I'll see if I can piece it together.
Also, I think it's funny that Howard's, one of the things that is blue on him, or at least the distinct thing when he's buried, is his tie. So he was tied up and stuff. Like, as in, like, he got tied up in all this mayhem, got him killed. Yeah. But, you know, it's just something that popped in my head. I thought it was funny. But, you know, it probably doesn't mean anything like that. Obviously, he he just always wears blue. So, the very last thing that's said on screen is they show a black and white shot of Saul's office, and he says, one day we'll wake up and brush our teeth and go to work, and at some point we will finally realize we haven't thought about it all, you know, which basically is like he's saying that he hopes that, you know, the thing that just happened will just become an everyday thing, and that it'll be in the back of the mind. It's like depressing, actually, you know. It's like,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, because, like, you know, sometimes, like, over time, like, even if, like, you care about someone and they die, or something like really tragic happens, eventually it's not gonna be like the next day or the next week or the next month or next year. It'll be years down the line. But like 10 years, you may not even, you know, you realize that you're just living your life, and that thing that was like terrible is just finally gone. Like, you just don't think about it, at least, anymore. And I feel like that was like his hope, at least. You know, Saul's hope, Jimmy's hope. Anyway.
So I don't think that was actually part of the episode. I think that was the trailer or the teaser for next week's episode.
I thought I debated about that also because it was so weirdly put. That was before the credits. I was like,
I think that's like a, you know, the you know, there's always like a coming on, you know, coming next week kind of. I think that was their version of that for this week. Excuse me.
Also makes me
go ahead.
Which also makes me think that's, you know, like how you're saying that there's going to be a time jump, but it's probably not going to be next week. We're going to get to see the outcome of this, them living their everyday lives, having to come from this, you know, this event. It's going to.
So, one quick thing to say about that concept you're presenting, that like, I mean, you're fundamentally right, but I just want to add one little piece to it that, you know, might not be next week or even next year, but eventually you're going to wake up and it's not going to be, you know, hanging over your head. Even at that time, if you do think of it, it can still floor you. You know what I mean? Even 10 or 50 years later, if you do think of it, it still might evoke negative emotions or whatever.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you're going to be thinking about it all the time. Like they're going to be thinking about it all day at work the next day, every night before they go to bed, every morning when they wake up for the next few days, weeks, whatever, you know. But it's also interesting to think that Saul can particularly give this insight to Kim because it wasn't that long ago that he just had 4 or 5 people murdered right in front of him in the desert.
You're right.
That was a dramatic experience for him to go through that he probably still isn't over yet, but that's probably something he's telling himself. He's like, eventually I won't think about it every morning when I wake up, you know. And maybe he's even better at suppressing tough memories. It seemed like he pushed Chuck to the back of his mind pretty quick. Like when he needs to move on, he's able to force himself to do it. Now, I don't know if that's healthy. Like, I think Jimmy's got some serious problems because he does that. But I can see how and why he's trying to give Kim this advice, this consolation. And by the way, you can go back a little farther. It's not as extreme as having someone who was basically your friend. Maybe his friend is a stretch to call Howard to Jimmy. Less of a stretch for Kim, but someone is close to them, right? Someone that you worked with and for a long time. You know, that being murdered in front of you, it's someone who maybe is, you know, a stranger who's even an enemy in the desert being murdered in front of me. That's still tough. But also go back to the skaters. They weren't murdered and they weren't exactly Jimmy's friends, but they got their legs broke right in front of him.
And it was all because of him almost.
Yeah, and it was kind of his fault. And they addressed that in the very next episode. If you remember, it's like at a restaurant, maybe on a date, and there's breadsticks. And every time they break the breadsticks, it's always like that cracking sound. It keeps flashing
I
back
forgot.
to the crack.
I think it was like
eventually like goes to the bathroom and pukes. He like can't. It's like disturbing him so much, you know, that he may not think about every morning when he wakes up.
Right.
Anyway, you can see that it's going to be something that Kim is going to have a hard time dealing with. Jimmy is also, but maybe has some experience with it already. But his advice to Kim might not be enough. You know, I don't know what it's going to take or where they're going to go. But
so, predictions times. There's a lot.
I still have one more point on this. I got to say one more key thing.
I bet.
Almost that same speech, that same idea of like, you know, one day you'll wake up and realize, or one day you'll make it through the day and realize you haven't thought about it all day long. You know, that same thing was said in an earlier episode when Mike's daughter-in-law was going. You remember she was going like these therapy, I don't know, counseling sessions at a church or something like that. It was like these group meetings where people who had different tragedies were sort of trying to bond and relate, and there was a counselor there kind of walking them through it. And she got Mike to go with her to these meetings.
Right.
And in one of the meetings, she says something to the effect of, I realized that I went all day without thinking about him. And, and I feel guilty about that. You know, like I understand that on some level it's progress, but I feel guilty that I didn't think about it. And am I supposed to not think about it anymore? Or am I gonna have to deal with? Anyway, she was kind of, and as she was telling this story, that on some level she was maybe happy for the progress, and maybe as an audience we felt like she was moving on, and it seemed like the people in that group were proud of her. But Mike is sitting there like twitching his eye, frustrated the idea that whether she's moved on or that he might move on one day.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
irksome at least to him. Like maybe he also doesn't know how to process it or move on, or has gone through days without thinking about it and is mad at himself for it. And anyway, interesting that that same concept is also being back on
yeah,
again in
yeah.
this
Like
episode.
addressed again. That's interesting. All right. Anything else before predictions?
I do have one other point I want to make,
Yeah.
but it can be after predictions.
Okay. So the first thing that I thought of, or that came to mind, was the scene when they were being buried. Howard and Lalo. And you have to correct me on this because I don't know 100%. But doesn't the cops find this lab in Breaking Bad? I
think that Walt sets it on fire.
See, I debated about if it burns down or if they find it. Well, even if it's burned, that means
they probably find it after he sets it on fire.
Yeah,
and
but
I wish I could remember the timing. I think it's after, or maybe in conjunction with him killing Gus.
It's
I
after,
don't remember
because
the
I think
exactly,
when once Gus, dies in Breaking Bad, his whole operation falls. Like everyone knows that Gus was part of a cartel or something like that. And I thought that the lab was discovered after that. Like I said, I wish I knew more, just because I haven't seen it in so long. I don't remember. I'm going to obviously eventually watch it and find that point. But overall, if it's found, that means there's a chance that the bodies are going to be found. And this is my prediction. I think that Howard's body is going to be found. And if Kim and Jimmy were the last ones to find, see him, I'm wondering if that's going to be tied. And that's why Jimmy was running or became Gene. Don't know if this is true, but it makes a lot of sense for storytelling, why they're telling the season, the story in season 6, and how significant Howard's death could even be even later on. Because I remember you're saying, like, there's no way it could be tied to him. It's been years. Well, it hasn't been years if his body was never found. And if they find it all of a sudden.
Yeah, the thing is, I still don't think finding it all of a sudden means that Jimmy did it.
No, but that means that they need to confront him.
They might want to question him, but it's, I don't know. They want to question him anyway. There's a bunch of other crimes they more specifically can tie him to. That I think, maybe this is just one more thing, but I don't think it's going to be a crucial plot point.
Right.
I vaguely remember them saying that they found dead bodies in a lab in the wake of the fire.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
But that easily could have been bodies. There's so many bodies that could have been found down there.
Right?
It could have just been guards, or someone that Gus killed earlier, someone that Mike killed and buried put in a barrel, or like, I don't know how likely it is when a place gets burned down that's already underground for them to dig 6 feet under the foundation. It seems unusual that they would do that. Things burn up. Like when something catches on fire, the ground underneath doesn't get burned. Like it wouldn't reveal the dead bodies because it got burned up. They would have to dig through concrete and 6 feet of dirt. And they would have to have motivation to do that. And I don't know that they would. And even if they did and found Howard's body, and were able to identify it after it having been buried that long, I still don't think that means suddenly they're like, oh, we got to find Saul Goodman now. I don't think that would be how that played out.
But I can see them at least wanting to question him, and he's guilty. Well, he knows what happened.
If they do question him, and they found the body, if he does turn himself in or something, and they found that body, it will be one more piece of the puzzle to address.
Yeah.
I don't expect it to be a particular part of the plot.
Okay.
Unless, I will take that back, because unless something I have been suspicious of is it, since Howard made a point to his wife Cheryl, since in that scene they gave us with the two of them, he made a point of warning her, hey, something crazy might go down with Jimmy. I think there may be, things might not. Mike is kind of assuming that there won't even be much of an investigation of Jimmy and Kim's apartment.
Yeah.
He'll show up missing, and then they'll find the car, and then Jimmy and Kim will come forward and say, yeah, we saw him, it seemed like he was on coke, and then they'll be like, I guess he drove to the beach and walked into the ocean, crazy dude. Oh well, too bad. And then that'll just be it. And it'll never be a reason for them to like search for DNA evidence in their apartment or whatever. And even if they did, yeah, Howard came in our apartment. That's why his fingerprints is there. That's why it's there.
Yeah.
He came in and had some wine. Yeah, well, it doesn't mean
He
we
was
killed him.
upset.
You know what I mean? Like
He thought he was
none
on
of these
something.
things
Yeah.
necessarily mean Jimmy killed Howard or knew that he was killed or any. Even if they find the body, it doesn't necessarily mean Jimmy must have been the one, or it doesn't necessarily mean anything. So,
But
but if Cheryl is telling the cops adamantly, hey, Howard warned me about this Jimmy character.
mhm.
Hey, do we know if Jimmy did this thing? And Cliff is also like,
I was gonna say there's also Cliff.
Howard doesn't seem like he was on coke, and but he was telling me about this thing. I can see. I'm not sure. The thing that makes me suspicious of it is that I don't know how they have enough time for that. We know that Jimmy doesn't end up in jail for murder or conspiracy or anything like that. I guess maybe Kim does. Maybe Kim falls on a sword.
I thought about
but
that
what could
too.
she
Yeah.
say that gets her in jail that
Well,
doesn't get Jimmy in jail?
she could take the full blow, especially if she doesn't know how to handle it.
Like, what do you mean take the full blow? What did she do? What full blow did she take? She tells the cops Howard came to the house and Lalo killed him, and
So,
then
yeah.
I went to kill some guy at a random house. Like,
No, I
how
was
does
more
any of
thinking
this-
of she said something else that indicated that he died from her, but that doesn't make any sense. You're right. Like
if she told the police the whole truth of everything,
yeah.
I still don't know. I mean, maybe it puts her in jail for conspiracy or fraud or something like that, But it would also put Jimmy in jail for conspiracy or fraud. It would also launch an investigation into Gus and Mike and all these other people that don't seem to be in trouble with the law. I don't know. I'm not sure what she could do to get herself in trouble and go to jail and not get all these other people in trouble and go to jail also.
I am curious on how her and Cliff, I assume they're going to have a scene together, and I'm curious on how that's going to go, because if she can't process stuff and he attacks her, I don't think she will spill, but also I think he may suspect something she's not telling the full picture if she can't keep her composure. I don't know what that means though. Like, I don't know, like, yeah, what that would mean, like if he would suspect that she knows what really happened.
Maybe Gus and Mike also have to kill Cliff and Cheryl to shut them up.
Yeah. Like I said, yeah.
And that might make him more and more distraught over what's happened and not know how to deal with it and want to get away from Jimmy or get away from Albuquerque. Yeah, I don't know.
Know. Or maybe she just decides. I mean, I did like, I could see her just leaving, like her splitting up from Saul or Jimmy and just moving just because she can't handle this.
Yeah.
Like that.
I'm going back home to my mom.
Yeah. Like it would make sense, that, especially if she feels like she can't, just live a day-to-day life, with the people she knows. Like she may, like, I feel like, even though if they knew that she wasn't behind it, they may be suspectful that she would know something. She's just not saying it. And I don't know, Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious on how they're just going to write out, this. I really don't think she's going to die just because this doesn't make, I feel like there's just more to it. Also, like, what are the next couple of episodes going to be like? What do you think the next couple of episodes will be? I felt like this was almost like a finale to a degree. Like, they could have ended it, and obviously there would have been questions, but like, it makes me also think, like it's like some way of resolution to like everything. Now they just have to live their life. Oh, yeah, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let me shift the gear a little bit.
Yeah.
Sort of still in the line of predictions, but on a different angle, different angle, and maybe they'll be connected somehow. Here's something I think about Gus and Mike. Think about the final interaction between the two of them. Mike is, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. Let me point out
yes.
let me talk about how trusted Mike is to Gus,
Mhm.
right? It's to the point where, Mike, if you go back a little farther, like Gus wants to use Nacho's dad as a pawn in all this.
Yeah.
And Mike's like, nope, you're not going to do that. I'll pull my gun out. You can shoot me dead, but like, I'm standing up to you.
Right.
And the result of this wasn't Gus like, demeaning him or kicking him out or firing him, the result was, okay, we won't use Nacho's dad, right?
Right.
Like he
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of stood his ground and Gus followed. And several times it almost seems like, we know this isn't actually the case, but sometimes the fact that it seems this way, that Gus is almost in charge of that Mike is almost in charge of Gus. There's several
You argue
scenes
that,
where
yeah.
where Mike is kind of telling Gus what to do. Is like, you need to go here, you need to do this. We already got that covered. Like, on some level, maybe for the sake of Gus's protection, but still Gus respects Mike enough to follow him and let him tell him what to do in these scenarios.
Yeah.
And at the end here, Mike is kind of upset with Gus. He's like, "What'd you go to the lab for? How'd you know Lalo was even going to be there?" And
Yeah, he uses the line, yeah, like he uses like, I feel like this is like a line that he always uses. What was it? Give me a sec. I had it written down somewhere. Let me see if I can find it really fast.
This could have gone differently or something.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. And Gus is like, it could have.
Yeah. And I think what Gus was saying there wasn't like, yeah, it could have gone anyway. I think what he was saying is that, yeah, it could have gone a lot smoother, but you screwed this up. I think that's what Gus was saying.
Oh, never
Gus was
got
upset
that.
at Mike. This is what I think, because if Mike had left a guard on Saul, Lalo couldn't have got to Saul.
That's true.
We don't know this, but if Gus did leave a guard on Kaylee and not on Saul,
oh, I did bring this up. I was like, why did they? Now, obviously, they did the scene because his daughter.
I think I might say Gus, but if Mike did that,
so yeah, I know
you know what I mean. Yeah.
But yeah, well, why did we see a scene of him going and seeing his family, and and I was like, I feel like there's more to that, and I think he may have brought something along this line, but yes, this makes a lot of sense if Gus finds out.
You could see on some level, Mike made some errors here.
Yeah,
he's
not perfect.
They might be reasonable errors to make. You can understand, and Lalo is very shrewd and but Gus did figure it out, and Mike didn't. And Gus has put a lot of trust in Mike, and it didn't quite pay off. They kind of got a little lucky that things worked out the way it did, and even things working out the way it did, like Gus didn't die, but. Think of how many of his men were killed, right? Think of what a disruption this is. He got shot. This is a lot of bad things happen that might not have happened if Mike handled things a little bit differently. Anyway, my point is, I can see Gus might be a little upset with Mike right now. And when you think about their relationship in Breaking Bad, it didn't quite seem to be the same. It didn't seem like Mike had quite that same authority and quite that same connection and trust with Gus that it does here. It seems like Tyrus is a little bit more like Gus's number one guy than Mike, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I wonder if, and it seems like Mike almost works more for Saul than Gus, right? And I wonder if that might be part of the fallout here, that Gus is frustrated with Mike and demotes him and assigns him to working for Saul or keeping an eye on Saul. This guy's a player. I want to know what he's up to. Keep him in line. Let me know what he's doing. And Tyrus, you're back in charge of security now. That he might not fire Gus, but he might put him down a notch. And Tyrus might be moved back up a little bit, and Gus might be shifted into more deal with Saul territory.
Oh, you mean Mike?
Which eventually, Mike.
Yeah.
And then eventually that means Mike is more in deal with Walt territory.
Yep.
You can see how when Walt comes to Saul the first time, they might already be watching him because Walt is mixed up with Nacho. It makes sense that, by the way, thinking about predictions, another thing that might happen next episode is, I said Nacho, I meant Tuco. Tuco's getting out of jail, right? We know. I wish I knew the time.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering that.
But he's a character right off the bat in Breaking Bad. So we know that he's only in jail. Like, he should have been out already, but his like bad behavior got him stuck in extra long.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about it. And he's a Salamanca. Oh yeah, this is another thing. So, well, continue to think, but I want to talk about the Salamancas really fast. The speech with Gus and Lalo about the Salamancas. But
just the idea that Tuco's going to get out of jail, and before, what Tuco was doing, he was working with Nacho and Hector. Well, now Hector's in a wheelchair and can't talk. Nacho's dead. The person that came to take over for Hector, Lalo, is dead. As far as anyone, like, where does Hector go? Who's his boss? Who does he work for? If he's still a dealer, where is his hook? Probably Gus. I think Tuco's gonna work for Gus. think that's
Hmm.
I don't know if it was explicitly explained. Hector Tuco might not be working directly for Gus, but Gus is like the supply line for the meth that they're all dealing.
Right.
Gus is where they get it from. They produce it in
Hmm.
Mexico. Gus ships it across the border, distributes it out. I think if Tuco's dealing, he's probably at least indirectly getting it from Gus. And anyway,
Interesting.
it's a piece of the puzzle to account for. I think there's a strong chance that we see Tuco in the next episode.
Or two. That's
We'll see.
interesting. That makes sense. So one of the things that Gus said to Lalo is he's gonna kill all of the Salamancas and leave Hector for last. There's one Salamanca he never killed. Let me phrase it. He never directly killed. I don't even think he was involved with it, and it was Tuco. Now,
Right. He didn't kill him, but Tuco does get killed.
So. Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
I don't know if Gus told Hector, I killed all the Salamancas. He says, you're the last Salamanca.
No. I was referring to the speech that he said to Lalo. Like, right?
To Lalo.
Yeah. Like when he's talking to Lalo, he's like, "I'm going to kill everyone. I'm going to make sure all the Salamancas are dead." As in, he wants to personally do it. Almost, I felt like it. But then we know that
he definitely does. He stopped Mike from killing Hector. He stopped.
I actually thought he did.
Nacho from killing Hector.
He was responsible for the twins' death, which I thought was interesting if you think about it. Because he warned directly. Yeah, he warns Hank, and Hank obviously kills him. But if he didn't warn Hank, they would have killed. They would still be alive potentially. So I thought that was interesting, but it was like one of those things that I don't know. Obviously, they can't fix because Gus was introduced way after.
They don't necessarily need to fix it. Just because Gus said he's gonna do that doesn't mean he is destined to do it. It's
I know that.
He wants to do it, but it doesn't mean
I just thought that was interesting. Supposedly, also there's like a cousin to the Salamancas or something like that. I did like research on all the Salamancas. Huh? No. There's a cousin. I don't know who his name is. His name is like Walking or something like that.
I think it was like a grandson of.
It's the grandson of Hector.
But he got killed with Eladio.
That's what I was thinking. I didn't even remember when I saw that. I was like, who the heck is this guy? But anyways, of course, like other predictions or do you have like any other predictions on what's to come?
Nothing I can think of. Like I have a lot of ideas about where it might go, and I have a lot of guesses that I feel are too wild. That aren't very founded. Now I don't have anything substantial beyond what we've already talked about.
Like obviously,
maybe a big picture prediction or clarification. I don't think Kim is gonna die.
I don't think
Kim is going to jail. I don't think Kim is gonna get vacuumed. I do think Kim might leave town. I do think she might still be working. She might be working for Gus. I think that's a possibility. That she might be working for Cliff. I think it's possible that Kim just continues with her plan to work for the pro bono company with Cliff. I think it's possible that she. I think is a likelihood that her and Jimmy split up one way or the other. They probably still love each other and want to be together, but they just can't.
They can't
Whether
move on.
It's because they're psychologically disturbed or because for the sake of like their career, she can't be associated with Jimmy. But those are things I kind of expect. Tuco's coming back.
I didn't think about Tuco.
Kind of fallout with Cheryl or Cliff over Howard's death. It might not be a cut and dry case.
There are like rumors that Jesse and Walter are going to be in this next couple of episodes. How do you think they're going to come back? I think that he's going to be a teacher, potentially. I guess theoretically, Jesse could be a student, but maybe there's more to it. Like maybe it's like something completely different that I'm not thinking about.
So it has been confirmed. I haven't researched it thoroughly enough to confidently say it's been confirmed. But supposedly, the different bits of information that have been put out there in different interviews and casting of different people, there's going to be one scene with Walt, one scene with Jesse, one scene with Jesse and Walt. The 3 total scenes involving them. So that's confirmed. Another thing that I am sure of is that the writers or the showrunners have said that they wanted their appearances to be organic. They didn't want it to just be fan service. They
I
didn't
was
want
thinking
it
that. I was
just to
wondering
be
that.
like a background scene. They wanted it to be an integral part of the story. It organically came along. They just didn't want to stick them in episode 2 just to get fans excited. They didn't want to just have them in the background eating dinner at a restaurant with Saul and Kim in the foreground just for fan service. They said they didn't necessarily even want them to be there. That if they were going to be there, they wanted it to be a natural part of the story. So, with all that in mind,
Makes it
that
sound like there's going to be more than
gives you
one
some
scene.
idea. Well, it still doesn't necessarily have to be more than one scene because it just could be there could be a natural, organic, important scene where Saul and Walt have some meeting between them and him setting up Gus or some meeting or maybe Jesse. I don't know. This is an example of the type of thing like I can make a bunch of guesses, but there's so many different guesses I can make in so many different directions, and I don't have a good reason for any one of them over the other that I get overwhelmed thinking about it and don't think it's really worth the time.
So it may not even be in chronological order. Like it's not going to be possibly during the timeline there are right now. It may be like when Breaking Bad was actually happening, and it's almost a flash forward, flashback, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. There's also another.
There's thousands of possibilities, and the little bits of information we got might narrow it down to only 400 possibilities. But we don't have enough time to run through 400 possibilities. Yeah. And even if one of the 400 was right, I would only be so proud of my guess. Like if you throw enough darts, one of them will stick. If I had like 3 solid guesses and it turned out to be one, but I don't have 3 solid guesses. Yeah. I have 40 shaky guesses. So.
Also, there's a character that is in Gene's storyline. I think his name's Jeff. I could be wrong on this name.
Yeah.
Is his name Jeff?
There is the character, the taxi driver that confronts him in the mall that has identified him. That guy's name is Jeff.
He's been recasted, supposedly. The original actor couldn't get the time to do it. Like, I guess he was working on some other project, so they replaced him with a different actor.
I'm a little shaky on that too, just so you know. It seems weird that they couldn't either recast him or work around it somehow.
Yeah.
And
it is COVID times, I guess, but
what's that?
It is COVID times theoretically, so maybe it was just hard. Maybe he just didn't want to work. I don't know.
It seems like for such an important storyline, such a featured character, that they would find a way. And someone on Twitter asked Thomas Schnauz, he's one of the showrunners. He's probably like, I don't know. There's 2 definitive showrunners, Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould. They're like the main guys.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple underneath them who are Thomas Schnauz is probably next in line as far as how much he's written and directed for the show. And not to mention his involvement in Breaking Bad before we even got to Better Call Saul. And someone asked him directly on Twitter about this, and he said, "Hey, I don't work for AMC anymore. Well, I've done my job. I'm not the one to ask this question." I don't know why he wouldn't just give a straight answer to that question if there wasn't something else to it. I don't know why Vince Gilligan, AMC, Better Call Saul, no official person involved with it has said anything official about it. So it makes me suspicious that maybe someone has misconstrued something and that there's more to it. And I'm holding off. It seems like such a weird character to recast. They haven't made any kind of official announcement, and so I'm waiting to see how that pans out. I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, I was like confused in the first place when I heard. I'm like, is that guy actually supposed to be that important? I think some of the things that like he was saying, like I think people were like, well, maybe it was, I can't remember if it was you or somebody else, but like you may know Kim or something like that, or working for somebody. But I was like, I don't know.
I wondered if he might be working for Skylar. We do know from Better Call Saul, from Breaking Bad. That Skylar ended up working as a dispatcher for a taxi company, and this guy is a taxi driver with an Albuquerque, little window decal or whatever. So there's a connection there. It's possible, like I don't know how deep they would go with that. I don't know why Skylar would be looking for Saul. Maybe she blames him or wants revenge or thinks he has money, that Walt had embezzled or whatever. I'm not sure, but I think that's at least in a realm of possibilities. But the thing is, that they so featured that Jeff character, and I think it would be so confusing to have some other actor come along threatening Saul that I think some people would be wondering
Is this
what
a different
happened to that
character?
taxi driver guy, and like everyone, like you are a fan of the show, you're paying attention. We're
Yep.
doing a podcast about it, right? And you were like, I think his name was Jeff. Like even you were a little bit uncertain about who
Yeah.
that guy was, right? I know some people who thought that this whole Gene storyline
Huh?
was a flashback, not a flash forward. You know what I mean? Like there's already a
Ah.
lot of people out there watching who have little bits of confusion about what's going on. And recasting Jeff would be confusing to people who do know what's going on. And so I'm really suspicious that's what they do. I wonder if maybe they did recast him but with a voice actor. I wonder if whatever they were going to do
Hmm.
ends up playing out over phone calls. And that way they can have recast him but not have someone that looks different.
Yeah.
That's one thought I have about it. Anyway,
Yeah, I
we'll
think
see.
there's like a
I'm
trailer.
very confused and
Yeah.
suspicious about this whole Jeff recasting thing. We'll
Yeah.
see.
There's like a trailer, I think, of him, right? I saw like a trailer of the taxi driver.
That's even another thing that confuses me more. They released like a teaser for
Y-
this season. They've released
Yeah.
a bunch. A lot of interesting teasers have come
Yeah.
out. A lot of them are like really short, like 10 seconds or
Yep.
something. Some are like a whole minute or whatever. But all little clues and hints at what's going on in the story. And I felt like if they are going to recast him, that would be a good way to let us know that they recast him. Reshoot that scene with the new actor and release it in a
Yep.
trailer,
Yep.
right? But they didn't do that. So it seems like maybe that's too hard, but then why release that trailer? I think you're adding to the confusion by reminding us what Jeff looks like when you're going to use a different actor for him. Like, I don't know. I really am unsure about it. Let me tell you something else. I forgot something actually.
Yeah.
Here's the prediction based on one of the little trailers, one of the little teasers.
Hmm.
There's one where the shot starts off on like a bulletin board, and there's different like signs and advertisements uh, that are like pinned up on a board, right?
Yeah.
And so one of them is like a concert in the park, and yoga at the community center, and I need a bassist for my band. Call this number. All these different like little advertisements or whatever. And in the front middle,
Huh?
pinned up there is a wanted sign for Jimmy McGill with the pictures of him as Saul and him as Jimmy, and $5 million reward. And so the camera's just on this
Five
image.
million. Damn.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry.
Remember, he's mixed up in multiple murders and embezzlements of millions of dollars and one of the biggest drug rings of all time. Like he's wanted.
Yeah.
And so here comes walking across the screen is Jimmy. And as he passes by, or Gene, I should say, he's got the mustache, this is in black and white. And as he passes by, he plucks down that sign and, it goes off screen. And now it's the same bulletin board minus the wanted sign. When I first saw this, my thought was, this is him trying to like keep attention from being drawn to himself. He's worried about being recognized, trying to hide this wanted sign of himself. But I looked at it really closely on that billboard. There's a bunch of advertisements. The things up there are for Albuquerque. Gene is in Kansas. He's in Omaha City. Why would this bulletin board have a bunch of Albuquerque stuff on it?
Unless he's returning to Albuquerque.
Unless Gene went back to Albuquerque. And that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense on sort of a meta level for the story to be tied up in Albuquerque, because that's almost where all the stories happen, all the characters are. Gene is gone, but maybe Kim's out there in Omaha. But by the way, this is another key realization I've had. We might have talked about this before, but I had this idea in my mind. It was at least possible that Jimmy chose to go to Omaha because he knew that's where Kim was from.
Right.
However, if you go back and watch the episode where he's being vacuumed away and they're making him a new photo ID, he looks at it and he's like, Omaha, what's there? He seems surprised and disappointed that that's where he's going, not that he chose it. So maybe there's some kind of coincidence that that's where Kim's from, and that might play out in some way. But also, it seems like he might be coming back to Albuquerque. One way or the other, if he does this makes even more sense, especially if Kim is still around in Albuquerque. I wonder if part of how the Gene plotline resolves is that he's going to turn himself in, but do it in a way that Kim gets the reward money. If he's going to contact Kim and tell her, hey, I'm around, I'm at this location, call the police, tell them where I am, and you can collect the reward money. It's also worth noting the last thing that Jimmy told Walt when they were both there with the vacuum guy,
Yeah.
and Walt was still trying to finagle. He was like, "All right, Jimmy, come with," or Saul, whatever. He's like, "Here's my plan. I'm gonna get this guy. I need you to call this place." And Jimmy's like, "Hey, slow down. It's over. You don't get it. I'm out of here. You need to drop this. What you should do is turn yourself in." Like and Walt tries to explain, no, like I made this call so the cops aren't blaming Skylar. He's like, yeah, but they're still gonna freeze her assets. They're gonna take that house. They're gonna take her kids from her. Like maybe in the long run she won't go to jail for all the crimes you mixed her up in, but her life is still screwed. If you come forward, admit to it all, face the music, go to jail, whatever it is, that's the best thing that you can really do for your family if that's your real concern. I wonder if Jimmy might take his own advice and turn himself in.
Huh. That makes a lot of sense. We still also don't know, haven't confirmed if the theory that it was like a theory that he had if she's pregnant.
Yeah, I'm thinking less and less that's the case. I think that's something that will be. I think too many people will be disappointed by that. I think it's and I think it's not really necessary, and it might open up more storylines that can finish up in this amount of time. I think it's a possibility, but I think it's low in the likelihood. I think it's more likely than Kim dying, but less likely than Kim working for Gus.
Yeah, it's true.
And I think Kim working for Gus isn't exactly likely either. But I
don't think so either, personally. But
by the way, I keep saying how I don't really have any good predictions. I thought of another one. Not necessarily for how the whole thing ends, but something that might happen in the next couple episodes. I think that the Kettlemans might come back into play.
Oh, because of Howard. Because Howard. Well, remember they said that Howard was on drugs because they heard it from something, and so they found out Howard is on drugs.
Yep.
They're probably going to want something to do with. I don't know if they could get money out of that, but they would be angling for money.
That was like the case that Jimmy was proposing in the first place. If he was on drugs, they might be owed some money for bad representation. So maybe now they can get that if that's the story. Or maybe if they're questioned, they might be able to point out that Jimmy was trying to stage it to look like he was on cocaine and really it wasn't. That complicates things enough that I don't think they have enough time to deal with in a story. I don't know. But anyway, it is something to consider. But also consider that they do still have leverage over the Kettlemans. Like they still have the ability to tell the Kettlemans, hey, if you don't embezzle this money for us or launder this money for us, then we're going to tell the cops about what you were doing with the old people's tax returns. And Jimmy seemed to kind of feel bad for them and gave them the cash. When the carrot and stick episode, he still gave them the money even after Kim threatened him. Yeah. And remember, they have the same Statue of Liberty blow-up thing over their office. Yep. There's a lot of connections there that might come into play. So
interesting.
I don't exactly know how or if, but it is another. I guess in the same way I said I don't have a good prediction, but you keep it coming up with more. But you can also see how many, just that one thing, how many ways that might go. I don't know which one it is and if it'll even happen. So it's kind of, that's what I mean when I say it's kind of overwhelming to think about all the possibilities.
So one quick question. I guess this should be the last question. I have heard from I don't know if it's directors or writers or producers or whatever, that the universe of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Albuquerque, whatever, is not over. So there is a possibility that there may be even another series. It's not confirmed, but if there was
lots of talk about it, but
but I was gonna say if there was,
I think it's unlikely.
Who do you think they would focus on? Like I said,
I think they either have to go way back in time and do like young Mike, and also, by the way, you're talking about Albuquerque, but a lot of times people talk about the Gilliverse. Vince Gilligan came up with Breaking Bad in the first place. And so the Gilliverse is what gets referred to as the world and the stories and everything. So they maybe they go way back to like young Mike, who, if I remember a little better, might have been in New Jersey. Or they go way forward with, I don't know, like Kaylee or something like that. But I get the idea from... What's that?
I guess they could go with Jesse. He's technically around.
Or, yeah.
But I was actually thinking of more. So, Saul from Breaking Bad, he was a big character, but he wasn't. And they made him, he may even be potentially bigger than Walter now, just because of how integral he is to both series. But what's another small character that they could go for? And I was like trying to think of it, like someone that we may even not care, because also people didn't particularly care for Saul, and they're like, a spinoff series about him, and now look what we have.
Entertaining, but not someone you like.
But, yeah. So I'm trying to think of like
Lyle,
another.
Maybe.
I was thinking of Lyle.
Manager at the
yeah, or imagine like, I mean, this would be off the wall, but like the Kettlemans, like this, someone that's like, we don't expect to have a spinoff series, but then they do. I don't think, by the way, Kettlemans, but I'm just.
The problem with any of those is that if they ever want to do flashbacks and include the other characters, they're all just too old. You know what I mean? Like,
that is true.
They would just be severely limited if they did any of these characters that you might have flash. They have to choose someone that's young that wasn't involved with the other characters who have aged up.
See, I thought Nacho would have been a great pick potentially, because we don't know too much about him after. Well, now we do because he's dead. But if he had survived, they could have continued his story without involved. Well, no, maybe not, because he'd probably be. It depends if he left, but it doesn't matter. He's dead. Actually, talking about Lyle, by the way, what do you think happens to him? He's not in Breaking Bad. I thought about that. Maybe he gets promoted to another show. I was debating if he could die. It's something so random and so minor, but there is a female that's store manager in Breaking Bad, so he's not in it. So what happens?
Well, he could just be a manager at a different.
I was gonna say, he could be promoted.
At one point in this series, they said there's 17 Pollos restaurants.
Yep.
But at some point in Breaking Bad, there's 14. At which point they need probably a couple district managers.
Yeah.
Some training, supervise, all these other positions Lyle could easily be promoted up into. I can also imagine at some point he stumbles into the criminal element that Gus is mixed up in, and either becomes part of it or gets killed to cover it up.
See, I didn't think
I don't think they have enough time to go very deep with that.
Yeah. So. I also didn't think that Tuco was coming back. That was, I don't know why it wasn't on my mind. And I'm wondering if something big will happen with him. Now, like, because he is dangerous. He's like pretty much a loose cannon, and would he do something stupid enough? Like, how are they going to contain that character, at least until they get into Breaking Bad? I don't know. That's interesting, just the fact that you brought him up in general.
Yeah, I don't know. He can't do anything too big because Gus is still around. Saul
exactly.
Still,
that's why I'm like,
everything is relatively under control. So for one, it might just not be that much time between him getting out of jail and him encountering Walt. Two, there could be someone like Gus or Mike working behind the scenes to keep some kind of control over him. He might limit his own ability to impact things just because if he's coked up on drugs all the time, or maybe even learn to control himself in jail. Like if he got stuck in there extra amount of time for losing his temper, maybe he starts learning to control his temper. Even him controlling his temper is still a loose cannon. But
would he be a threat because of Lalo dying? Like, would he want to know about Lalo, or would he not care? That's like another question about.
As far as he knows, Lalo died in Mexico. As far as anyone knows, Lalo died in Mexico.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I was thinking of Hector. Would he be smart enough to know, for Hector to know how to communicate with Tuco? But Tuco does have like an impatience with Hector. Like, he obviously cares about Hector, but he's not as intelligent, I feel, around Hector. This is the first encounter in Breaking Bad. Like, he was like, well, why?
They make him out to be dense and self-absorbed.
Yeah. But he did figure out that there was something possibly wrong with the burritos or whatever he was making. Anyways, I don't know. It's just something to keep food for thought, I guess you could say. But I guess that's it. I guess we should end it.
Yep. I do kind of need to get going, and we covered a lot. I'm glad we kept going a little extra at the end because I kept having new thoughts.
Yeah. So we'll see how this all plays out. I actually just don't know 100% what to expect, but it'll be.
One overall thing I'll say, you kind of mentioned this a little at the beginning, that this episode was a little bit more resolution, and it didn't give us as much to ponder about where things were going. Like, if most of the beginning episodes of this season have been setting things up, so we had a lot to look forward to and speculate on, and it all happened, and now we need some more to work with.
Yeah. Like, obviously, I think the biggest thing in the next couple of episodes is really going to be the resolution to Gene, which obviously should be, but
I'm curious on that's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 episodes.
No.
I think it's going to happen in the last 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah.
But we might get some more clues to where.
I was going to say, I feel like it's going to be set up for the gene. Like anything that we have from here on out, I feel like will most likely be a setup to what's going on with Gene. But I'll see if that's right. All right. Anyways, thanks everyone for coming or watching, and I will see you later. Have a good night.